The bell above the bookstore door jangled, but Elias didn't look up from the counter. His fingers traced the edges of a worn paperback. Its pages yellowed like the memories he clung to. Outside, San Francisco hummed with life. But inside, his world felt like it was unraveling. Elias had raised Lila alone since she was 3, when her mother, Claire, walked out without a backward glance. He'd been 25 then, a gay man in a city that preached acceptance but didn't always deliver, juggling night shifts at a diner and daycare drop-offs while fielding whispers about that guy raising a kid alone. He'd built a life for them, brick by brick story times in their cramped Mission District apartment, piggyback rides through Golden Gate Park, and late-night talks when Lila's teenage heart broke over crushes and dreams. He wasn't just her dad. He was her everything. But now, at 47, he stood behind the counter of his struggling bookstore, wondering where it had all gone wrong. Lila, now 24, burst through the door, her red hair catching the afternoon light like a flare. "Dad, you won't believe it," she said, waving a glossy wedding planner. "Jasper proposed last night at the pier. Look at this ring." She thrust her hand forward, the diamond glinting like a promise of a life Elias could never afford. Her joy was infectious, but it stabbed at him, too. Jasper, her fiancé, came from a world of trust funds and waterfront estates, while Elias's world was late bills and a bookstore that barely broke even. "Sweetheart, that's incredible," Elias said, forcing a smile. He stepped around the counter to hug her, his calloused hands careful not to smudge her pristine planner. "Tell me everything." Lila's words tumbled out plans for a lavish wedding at a Napa vineyard, a designer gown, a string quartet. Each detail tightened the knot in Elias's chest. He'd spent years scraping by, pouring every dollar into Lila's college fund, her art classes, her dreams. But a wedding like this, it was a universe beyond his reach. That night, alone in his apartment above the bookstore, Elias sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out like a losing hand of cards. The bookstore was bleeding money. Online retailers had gutted his business, and the landlord was hiking the rent again. He'd already taken out a second loan to keep the lights on, but Lila's wedding loomed like a tidal wave. She hadn't asked him for money yet, but he knew it was coming. And he knew he'd fail her. The next morning, Lila returned. Her energy dimmed. "Dad, Jasper's parents offered to cover half the wedding, but I want you to help with the rest. It's important to me." Her voice was soft but firm, her eyes searching his for the father who'd always found a way. Elias swallowed hard. "Lila, I'll do what I can, but things are tight right now." "The store. It's always the store," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You've been saying that since I was a kid. I thought this time, for my wedding, you'd figure it out." She turned away, her planner tucked under her arm like a shield. The silence she left behind was louder than the city outside. Elias stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking in. He'd raised her to believe she could have anything. But now, her dream was slipping through his fingers, and so was she. Over the next week, Lila's visits grew rare. She texted less. Her messages clipped, busy with planning. "Talk soon." Elias kept working, shelving books, ringing up the few customers who wandered in. But his mind was on her. He remembered the pride in her eyes when he'd taught her to ride a bike, the way she'd clung to him during thunderstorms. He'd been her hero then. Now, he was just the man who couldn't pay for her fairy tale. One evening, as he locked up the bookstore, a familiar figure lingered across the street. Marcus, his ex-partner. Marcus, with his easy smile and tailored blazer, had been Elias's first love after Claire left. They'd met at a Pride rally in '98, back when Elias still believed in happy endings. But Marcus had wanted a life unburdened by a toddler, and Elias had chosen Lila. They hadn't spoken in years, but there he was, leaning against a lamppost, watching, still saving the world, one book at a time. Marcus called, his voice teasing but warm. Elias crossed the street, wary. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" "Saw Lila's engagement post online. Figured you might be processing." Marcus's eyes softened, seeing too much. "You okay?" Elias shrugged, his throat tight. "She's shutting me out. Wants a wedding I can't afford. I don't know how to fix this." Marcus hesitated, then reached out, his hand brushing Elias's arm. "You don't have to do it alone. You know. I've got some connections, event planners. Venues. I could help." Elias pulled back, the old hurt flaring. "I've been doing it alone since you left, Marcus. I'll figure it out." But as he walked away, the city's lights blurring through unshed tears, Elias wasn't so sure. Lila's silence was a wound that grew deeper each day, and the bookstore his life's work was crumbling. He'd raised her to chase her dreams, but now, those dreams were tearing them apart. The bookstore's neon sign flickered as Elias flipped it off, casting the shop in shadow. He hadn't slept properly in days, haunted by Lila's last words, "You'd figure it out." She hadn't called since, and her absence was a void he couldn't fill with work or whiskey. San Francisco's fog rolled in, mirroring the haze in his heart. He tried to focus on solutions. He called a few banks, but his credit was shot too many late payments, too little collateral. The bookstore was his only asset, and selling it would mean losing the last piece of himself that felt like home. He'd opened it a decade ago, a dream born from nights reading Lila to sleep with dog-eared classics. It was where she'd learned to love stories, where they'd laughed and cried together. Now, it was a millstone around his neck. One morning, a letter arrived from the landlord, a final notice. Pay the overdue rent or face eviction in 30 days. Elias stared at the paper, his hands shaking. He could sell some rare books from the backroom collection first editions he'd saved for emergencies, but even that wouldn't cover Lila's wedding. He felt like he was drowning, and no one was throwing him a line. Lila's next visit was a storm. She stormed into the bookstore, her face flushed with anger. "Jasper's parents are pushing for a smaller wedding now," she said, pacing. "They think I'm being unreasonable. But this is my day. Dad, you said you'd help. Where's the money?" Elias's heart sank. "Lila, I'm trying. I've got loans out, and the store's barely hanging on. I need time." "Time?" Her voice cracked. "I'm getting married in 6 months. I can't plan a wedding on promises. Jasper's parents are already judging us judging you." Her words cut deeper than she knew, echoing the stares he'd endured as a young gay dad in a world that wasn't ready for him. "I'm doing everything I can," he said quietly. "This store, this life it's all been for you. Then why does it feel like you're letting me down?" Lila's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She turned and left, the bells jangle mocking him in the silence. Desperate, Elias dug through old contacts, swallowing his pride. He called Sarah, a friend from his diner days who now ran a catering business. "I need a miracle," he told her over coffee in a noisy Mission cafe. "Lila's wedding is slipping away, and so is she." Sarah, with her no-nonsense braid and warm eyes, leaned forward. "Elias, you've got a community here. Let us help. I can do the food at cost, and I know a florist who owes me a favor. But you've got to talk to Lila really talk. She's hurt, but she loves you." Elias nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. He'd always been the one to fix things, to make Lila's world right. Now, he felt like a failure, and her silence confirmed it. That night, he found himself at a local bar, a place where the city's queer community gathered. The music was loud. The crowd diverse drag queens, activists, couples young and old. Elias hadn't been here in years, not since he'd stopped believing he deserved a life beyond fatherhood. Marcus was there, nursing a drink, his presence both a comfort and a sting. "You look like hell," Marcus said, sliding a beer toward him. "Still fighting the world alone." Elias took a sip, the bitterness matching his mood. "She's my daughter, Marcus. I'd do anything for her. But she's shutting me out, and I don't know how to reach her." Marcus leaned closer, his voice low. "You raised a strong woman. She's pushing back because she's scared of losing you, scared of her future. Talk to her, Elias. And maybe let someone help you for once." Elias wanted to argue, but Marcus's words hit home. He'd spent 2 decades building walls to protect Lila, but maybe those walls were keeping her out now. As he left the bar, the city's lights felt a little brighter, a spark of hope flickering in his chest. He'd find a way to reach her, had to. Elias woke to the sound of rain drumming against the bookstore's windows. The city was gray, but he felt a flicker of resolve. He couldn't lose Lila, not to a wedding, not to money, not to his own stubborn pride. He spent the morning making calls, reaching out to old friends and local vendors, piecing together a plan. Sarah's catering offer was a start, and a florist agreed to donate arrangements if Elias hosted a book signing for her wife's memoir. The community was rallying, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. He texted Lila, "Can we talk? I'm trying. Sweetheart. I love you." No reply. He stared at his phone, the silence louder than the rain. He knew she was at Jasper's parents' house in Pacific Heights, a world of marble countertops and expectations he couldn't meet. The thought of her there, surrounded by wealth and judgment, made his chest ache. That afternoon, a customer brought in a box of rare books to sell, a collection of signed first editions, including a pristine copy of Stone Butch Blues. Elias's heart raced. It could fetch thousands at auction. He hesitated, his fingers grazing the cover. Selling it would mean betraying the community he'd built the bookstore for, but it might mean saving his bond with Lila. He set it aside, undecided, the weight of the choice crushing him. Lila finally came by that evening, her expression guarded. "I got your text," she said, standing by the door, not stepping fully inside. "Jasper's parents are covering most of the venue now, but I still need your help. Dad, I want you to be part of this." Elias took a deep breath. "I'm working on it, Lila. I've got people helping. Sarah's doing food, and I'm looking at selling some books. But it's not just about money. I need you to know I'm here. Always." Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You've always been here, but it's not enough anymore. I need you to show up for this, not just try." She left before he could respond, her words echoing in the empty store. Desperate for a breakthrough, Elias met with Marcus again, this time at a quiet park near the Castro. The rainbow crosswalk stretched before them, a symbol of resilience Elias had always drawn strength from. "I'm thinking of selling the bookstore," he admitted, his voice breaking. "It's the only way to give her what she wants." Marcus's eyes widened. "Elias, that store is your soul. You built it for her, for this community. There's got to be another way." "I don't see one," Elias said, staring at the ground. "She's slipping away. Marcus, I can't lose her." Marcus reached for his hand, and this time, Elias didn't pull away. "Then let me help. I know a guy who runs a crowdfunding platform. We could start a campaign, call it Lila's Dream Wedding. The community loves you. Elias. They'll show up. Elias hesitated. He'd never asked for help. Not like this. But Marcus's hand was warm. Steady. A reminder of a time when he hadn't felt so alone. Okay, he said finally. Let's try it. That night, they set up the campaign. Elias pouring his heart into the description, I've raised my daughter alone. And now she's starting her own life. Help me give her the wedding she deserves. He posted it on social media, his hands trembling as he hit share. By morning, donations were trickling in $50 from Sarah, $20 from a regular customer, $100 from an old friend. It wasn't much, but it was a start. For the first time in weeks, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. But when he texted Lila about the campaign, her response was cold, a fundraiser. Dad, that's embarrassing. I don't want our story online for strangers to pity. The word stung, sharper than any rejection he'd faced as a young gay man in a hostile world. He'd thought he was fighting for her, but maybe he was fighting for himself to prove he was still the dad she needed. The crowdfunding page glowed on Elias's laptop, the total creeping up to $3,000. It was a fraction of what Lila's vineyard wedding would cost, but each donation felt like a hand pulling him from the abyss. Messages poured in, stories from customers who'd found solace in his bookstore, from queer elders who saw their own struggles in his. Yet Lila's rejection of the campaign gnawed at him. Embarrassing. The word looped in his mind, a reminder of every time he'd felt less than enough. He threw himself into work, restocking shelves, planning a community book event to boost donations. The bookstore buzzed with new energy volunteers from the neighborhood, a drag queen offering to MC, a local band signing up to play. Elias felt the city wrapping its arms around him, but Lila's absence was a hole nothing could fill. One evening, Jasper stopped by, his polished shoes out of place on the bookstore's worn floor. Lila's struggling, he said, his voice low. She loves you, Elias, but she's caught between her dream and, well, reality. She doesn't know how to bridge that gap. Elias gripped the counter, steadying himself. I'm trying, Jasper. I'd give her the world if I could. I know, Jasper said, his eyes kind but distant. But her world's changing. She's not just your little girl anymore. The truth hit like a punch. Elias had raised Lila to be fiercely independent, but now that independence felt like a wall between them. He nodded, unable to speak, as Jasper left. The next day, Marcus showed up with a stack of flyers for the book event. You're not alone in this, he said, his voice firm. Let's make it big, turn it into a celebration of Lila, of you, of this community. Elias managed a smile, grateful for Marcus's persistence. They spent hours planning, and for the first time in years, Elias felt a spark of the connection they'd once had. Marcus wasn't just helping with the wedding, was reminding Elias who he was before the weight of fatherhood consumed him. The event was a success. The bookstore overflowed with people, locals, activists, readers young and old. The drag queen, Sapphire, brought down the house with a lip-sync performance, and the band played into the night. By the end, they'd raised $10,000. Elias's heart soared, but when he called Lila to share the news, she didn't pick up. Her voicemail felt like another door closing. Desperate to reconnect, he drove to Jasper's parents' house, a sprawling mansion that made his bookstore look like a closet. Lila answered the door, her face a mix of surprise and wariness. Dad, what are you doing here? I needed to see you, Elias said, his voice raw. The community's coming together for you, Lila. We raised 10 grand. I know it's not everything, but it's a start. I'm trying to show up for you. Lila's eyes flickered with something gratitude. Maybe, but it was gone fast. Dad, I don't want a charity wedding. I want you to make this happen, not strangers. Why is that so hard? Her words broke him. Because I'm not Jasper's parents. Lila. I'm just me. And I've given you everything I have. She looked away, her jaw tight. Maybe that's not enough anymore. She closed the door softly, but it felt like a slam. Elias drove home through the rain, his vision blurred by more than the weather. He'd raised her to stand tall, but now she was standing without him. Back at the bookstore, he sat among the shelves, the rare stone Butch Blues staring back at him. Selling it could push the fundraiser closer to her goal, but it would mean sacrificing a piece of his soul. He didn't know if he could do either, if it would even matter. The bookstore felt emptier than ever, the shelves looming like silent judges. Elias hadn't heard from Lila in days, and the crowdfunding total stalled at $12,000. He'd poured his heart into the campaign, into the community event, but her rejection, "I don't want a charity wedding," echoed louder than the donations. He sat at the counter, the rare book in his hands, its weight a reminder of the choice he couldn't escape. Marcus stopped by, his presence a quiet anchor. "You're killing yourself over this, Elias," he said, leaning against a shelf. "You've done everything you can. Maybe it's time to let her come to you." "I can't," Elias said, his voice hoarse. "She's my daughter. I've fought for her since the day she was born. I can't stop now." Marcus's eyes softened. "You're not just fighting for her. You're fighting to prove you're enough. But you've always been enough, Elias. She just needs to see it." The words hit hard, stirring memories of the battles Elias had faced coming out in a small town, raising Lila through judgment and struggle, building a life from nothing. He'd survived it all for her. But now, he wondered if he'd taught her to value the wrong things. He decided to try one last time. He wrote Lila a letter, pouring out his heart in a way he hadn't since she was a child. "You're my world, Lila. I've made mistakes, but every choice was for you. I'm not Jasper's parents, with their money or their world. I'm just your dad, and I love you more than you'll ever know. Let's find a way through this together." He slipped it into her mailbox, his hands trembling with hope and fear. Days passed with no response. The bookstore's eviction notice loomed, and Elias finally made the call to auction the rare books. The stone Butch Blues sold for $8,000, enough to push the fundraiser to $20,000. It was a sacrifice that gutted him, but if it meant giving Lila her dream, he'd do it 1,000 times over. Then, a miracle. Lila showed up at the bookstore, her eyes red from crying. "I got your letter," she said, her voice small. "I'm sorry, Dad. I've been so caught up in this wedding, and what I thought I needed. I didn't see how much you were trying." Elias's heart leapt, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I was ashamed," she admitted. "Not of you, but of how I acted. Jasper's parents made me feel like your life wasn't enough. But it is. You're enough." He pulled her into a hug, tears streaming down his face. "I'd sell the world for you, Lila. I just need you to let me in." They talked for hours, the bookstore's shelves a backdrop to their reconciliation. Lila agreed to scale back the wedding, to let the community's donations shape a celebration that reflected their shared history, not Jasper's wealth. For the first time in months, Elias felt like her dad again. But the relief was short-lived. The next morning, the landlord called. The eviction was moving forward unless Elias paid the full back rent by week's end. The bookstore, his legacy, Lila's childhood, was slipping away. And even as he held his daughter close, He knew the hardest choice was still ahead. The bookstore's shelves stood like old friends, but Elias knew he might lose them. The landlord's deadline was 3 days away, and even with the auction money, he was $5,000 short. Lila's reconciliation had mended his heart, but the threat of eviction loomed like a storm cloud. He couldn't tell her not now, when they'd finally found their way back to each other. He threw himself into saving the store. He and Marcus organized another event, this time a storytelling night where locals shared tales of love and resilience. The community showed up in droves: queer youth, old activists, families who'd found refuge in Elias's books. They raised $2,000, but it wasn't enough. Elias felt the walls closing in, each tick of the clock a reminder of what was at stake. Lila started coming by daily, helping with the event, shelving books, even sketching designs for a simpler wedding. "I don't need Napa," she said one afternoon, taping a flyer to the window. "I just need you there, Dad." Her smile was a lifeline, but Elias's secret, the bookstore's fate, weighed heavier each day. One night, Marcus stayed late, helping Elias close up. The air between them crackled with unspoken history. "You're carrying too much," Marcus said, his voice soft. "Let me in, Elias. Not just for Lila, for you." Elias looked at him, the man who'd once broken his heart but was now stitching it back together. "I don't know how," he admitted. "I've been Lila's dad for so long. I forgot how to be anything else." Marcus stepped closer, his hand finding Elias's. "Then let me remind you." They stood there, the bookstore quiet around them, and for the first time in years, Elias let himself lean into someone else. The next morning, disaster struck. The landlord arrived, papers in hand. "Time's up, Elias. Pay by tomorrow, or you're out." Elias pleaded, but the man was unmoved. As he left, Lila walked in, catching the tail end of the conversation. Her face fell. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to burden you," Elias said, his voice breaking. "You're finally happy. I couldn't take that away." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "This store is our home. It's where you taught me everything. We're saving it together." She rallied the community, posting about the bookstore's plight online. Donations poured in, along with messages of support. By evening, they'd raised $4,000, agonizingly close. Lila and Jasper even offered to redirect wedding funds, but Elias refused. "This is your day," he said. "I'll find another way." That night, Marcus came through. His crowdfunding contact pulled strings, securing a grant from a local arts foundation. It was enough to cover the rent and keep the bookstore afloat. Elias wept, overwhelmed, as Marcus held him. "You're not alone anymore," Marcus whispered. With the bookstore safe, Elias and Lila planned the wedding together, a smaller affair in a community garden, with Sarah's catering and the florist's donated arrangements. It wasn't Napa, but it was theirs, built on love and resilience. As they worked, Elias felt a shift not just in Lila, but in himself. He was more than a dad. He was part of a community, a man who could love and be loved again. The community garden bloomed with wildflowers, fairy lights strung between trees, casting a soft glow over the wedding. Elias stood at the edge, his suit secondhand but sharp, watching Lila in a simple white dress that made her look like a dream. The crowd was small friends, neighbors, the bookstore's regulars, but it felt like the whole city was there, their love filling the air. Sarah's food scented the breeze, and Sapphire, the drag queen, officiated with a warmth that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Elias walked Lila down the aisle, her arm in his, her smile brighter than the sun. I'm proud of you, Dad, she whispered. Not just for this, for everything. His throat tightened, and he squeezed her hand, unable to speak. He'd almost lost her, but here they were, together, stronger than ever. The ceremony was perfect laughter, vows, a first dance under the stars. Elias watched Lila and Jasper sway, their love a beacon. Marcus stood beside him, their shoulders brushing, a quiet promise of something new. The community had saved the bookstore, and in doing so, they'd saved Elias, too. He'd spent years thinking he had to do it all alone, but now he saw the truth. Love was a collective act, a tapestry woven by many hands. As the night wound down, Lila pulled Elias aside. I was wrong, she said, her voice steady. I thought a big wedding would prove something to Jasper's parents, to myself. But you taught me what matters. This, she gestured to the garden. The people, the love, this is enough. Elias hugged her, tears falling freely. You're enough, Lila. You always have been. Later, as guests drifted home, Marcus took Elias's hand. You did it, he said, his eyes warm. Not just the wedding, the whole damn thing. You raised her, kept the store, kept yourself. That's a life. Elias smiled, the weight of years lifting. I had help. The bookstore reopened the next week, its shelves fuller, its future brighter. Elias hung a photo from the wedding above the counter, him and Lila, laughing, surrounded by their community. It was a reminder of what they'd built, what they'd survived. Lila visited often, her planner replaced by sketches for a new art project inspired by their story. And Marcus stayed, his presence a steady rhythm in Elias's life, a second chance at love he hadn't dared hope for. San Francisco sparkled outside, its streets alive with possibility. Elias had raised his daughter alone, but he wasn't alone anymore. The city, the community, Lila, Marcus, they were his family, his home. And as he locked up the bookstore that night, he knew he'd given Lila more than a wedding. He'd given her a legacy of love, resilience, and the courage to build a life that was enough.